Good morning, I'm Olivia Guthrie. This is your news at 10 o'clock. Court documents show Novak Djokovic, who's fighting deportation from Australia, tested positive for coronavirus last month. His lawyers claim he was granted a vaccine exemption to enter the country because of the recent infection. The tennis star has been detained at an immigration facility in Melbourne since Thursday morning after his visa was cancelled. New figures from the UK Health Security Agency show booster jabs are 90% effective in people over 65 after 3 months. The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation has urged the government to ditch fourth jabs for the elderly and focus instead on rolling out the first booster dose. Dr. Catherine Millington-Saunders says there's no current need for a fourth vaccine.
There is no immediate need to have the fourth booster vaccination, and that will, I'm sure, continue to be under review. The facts continue to be that if you're not vaccinated, severe disease and ITU admissions and death are much more likely. So let's clarify the first important thing is it is crucial that you have your first and second doses if you actually haven't had those, and have your third or booster vaccination dose in the first place.
Meanwhile, more than 1,000 military personnel have been made available to support the rollout of the vaccine in England, Scotland and Wales. New data shows hospital staff absences due to COVID have risen 59% in a week. Thousands of flat owners will not have to pay to remove dangerous cladding from their buildings. Housing Secretary Michael Gove says developers will have to cover the costs of the cladding changes for buildings over 11 metres tall. The bill's estimated to be up to £4 billion. Business commentator Michael Wilson says it's a relief for leaseholders.
For those people who have been trapped through no fault of their own, because, people may well have bought flats. What do they know about cladding? Or rather, what did they know about cladding before Grenfell? Probably very little. Why should they know? It's down to safety organisations, of which there are plenty in this country, etc., etc. So I think it's relatively good news. How it will be applied, the detail of that to come.
The head of the UK's armed forces warns the rise in Russia's submarine activity threatens underwater cables crucial to global communications. Admiral Satoni Radakin says any attempt to damage the undersea cables, which transmit nearly all internet data traffic, could be considered an act of war. It comes after footage emerged of a collision between a Royal Navy warship and a Russian submarine in late 2020, sparking concerns about Russia's cable mapping activity. Meanwhile, the UN's appealing for restraint amid fresh violence in Kazakhstan. Police killed dozens of anti-government protesters after the president there authorised security forces to shoot to kill. Thousands more have been arrested, including the former Prime Minister Karim Mazimov on suspicion of treason. Russian forces have been deployed to help the regime put down the uprising. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric says people should be allowed to protest.
What is clear is that all demonstrations need to be peaceful. People have a right to express their grievances. It needs to be done peacefully. And security forces need to protect that right and show and act with restraint.
In the US, 3 men have been given life for killing Omar Arbery. The 25-year-old's family were in the courtroom to hear the sentencing. The black man was chased and gunned down in Georgia in 2020. His mother says she never lost faith that justice would be done.
When I entered the courtroom on October 18th, I sat in that courtroom for 5 weeks straight. But I knew that we would come out with a victory. Yes. I never doubted it. And I knew that today would come.
And the family of trailblazing actor Sir Sidney Poitier says his death has left a giant hole in our hearts. The first black man to win a Best Actor Oscar has died aged 94. Among his films were In the Heat of the Night and To Sir with Love. It's 6 minutes past 10. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Now it's back to Saturday Morning UK.
Welcome to the Saturday selection here on GB News, and we've got a new presenter, Philip Davis, joining Tonya Buxton and myself, Esther McVeigh. So welcome to the show, and welcome to Philip as well. Now, we've got our news stories from the week. Tonya?
Yeah, so I'm going to kick off on the one that's in all the papers, actually, and it's all about Blair. It's all about the fact that 1 million people have signed for him not to get his knighthood, which I completely agree with. I mean, all the stuff that's coming out now about him getting... I mean, he's a multi-millionaire. He's a very, very rich man. And he got 76,000 of furlough handouts. I mean, I know it was within the law, and I can understand that he was allowed to do it, but morally, was that the right thing to do when our country was in a state of panic, and to take that money? But so I don't think he should get a knighthood, and I don't think that just because it's a set of precedents that ex-PMs get knighthoods that he should. What do you think, Philip?
Well, I'm pretty sure most people would agree with you, Tonya. But Esther always tells me that I'm a contrarian.
Okay.
And,
I call him a right contrapuncle.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't have a problem with him getting a knighthood, actually.
Why? Because that's what they do?
Well, you know, the fact is he won 3 general elections. Not many prime ministers win 3 general elections. He even won a general election after we went to the war in Iraq. And I think that, you know, I mean, look, I disagree with a huge amount that Tony Blair says and does. But I think that, you know, in terms of the honour system, if we can't honour somebody who's won 3 general elections on the trot, it's a pretty poor state of us, taking aside our own personal opinions about him. It's about the position that we should be.
But I think just because it's set a precedent, since so many facts have come out about Tony Blair, the way he goes around making money, his allegiances with, you know, certain despots around the world, and also what he took us to war. You know, a lot of our young men and women died because Blair took us to a war that we didn't need to go to. I don't think it should be just a set standard that we give him an honouring when he doesn't deserve it.
I just don't think we should, you know, make decisions based on what our opinions of people. The honour system should honour people for the positions that they've held and the things that they've done. And you know, he won 3 general elections. Much to my dismay, he won 3 general elections, but he did win 3 general elections.
On that note, Philip, I would like to say that I would like a damehood.
Well, I'm sure
so I'm just putting it out there, you know.
It's only a matter of time.
So that was your news story of the week. Both of you having different points of view. Well, the one that really grabbed my attention, and I've had huge fascination for this lady, Elizabeth Holmes. There she was, founder of the company Theranos. She went, set it up in 2003, and by 2015 she was being feted, Forbes, all these international magazines. The company was worth £9 billion. It was a new way of doing blood testing, supposedly, and it was probably the biggest ever corporate con. She's now been done for fraud and for basically hoodwinking the pharmaceutical industry and also the financial sector, all of which was putting money into it. And what was fantastic, on the a condition that when people handed over money, it was that she wouldn't have to reveal how Theranos technology worked, and all of these people put money into this business. Anyway, it's all come to an end. Court case this week, done for fraud, and that's it, move on.
Do you think, though, that she got it because she's a pretty blonde and she was dealing with a lot of middle-aged men?
Nothing wrong with pretty blondes getting a job or having... No, absolute disgrace that she managed to hoodwink so many people. And she was being championed by the likes of Bill Clinton and Rupert Murdoch. So those were our stories of the week. There'll be more news stories that we'll be coming to a little bit later on as well. But a group of MPs and leading medics and scientists are calling for a review of the child vaccination programme, specifically for 12 to 15-year-old healthy children. In a letter being sent to members of the Joint Committee on Vaccines and Immunisation, the group will say the benefit to risk ratio of child vaccination should be reassessed in the light of the Omicron variant and the new evidence on both vaccine harms and superior natural immunity. We urge, they say, the JCVI to review this new evidence and provide updated advice to the government with regards to mass vaccination of healthy 12 to 15-year-olds. In a moment, we'll be speaking to one of those signatories of that letter, Professor Brent Taylor, who was a member of the JCVI for 9 years. But first, let's speak to MP Miriam Cates, Conservative member for Penistone and Stocksbridge, who has coordinated this campaign. So, morning, Miriam. First of all, what's in the letter and why did you coordinate it?
So the letter is basically asking the JCVI to do an up-to-date review of the evidence in terms of what are the benefits to children of vaccination and what are the potential risks, and to provide updated advice to government as a result. So back in September, when we decided to roll out vaccination to healthy 12 to 15-year-olds, everybody understood that it was a very marginal decision. We hoped that there would be some reduction in transmission. That was the reason we pushed ahead with it. We knew there wasn't a great benefit to children health-wise because they're at such low risk, fortunately, from COVID. And we did know that there were some very rare but quite concerning side effects from vaccination to that age group, which the JCVI were very clear on. So we've understood that the benefits have been marginal. I think it's interesting that around 50%, I think slightly fewer than 50% of 12 to 15s have had that first jab. So I think that parents and children understand that it was a very marginal decision. But as you said, over recent weeks, with the Omicron variant becoming dominant and also with some new studies about the risks, I wonder if that balance has actually shifted. So it's possible now that vaccination doesn't really reduce the risk of transmission. Of course, it still provides excellent protection against severe disease. So it's brilliant for people who are at risk from COVID. But if it doesn't protect against transmission, that reduces the benefits of vaccinating children. And if we know a bit more about the potential harms, then we need to look at those too. So just as the JCVI announced yesterday an update in whether or not they're going to recommend a fourth dose, they're not. I want them to have another look at the evidence for children just to make sure that if we are vaccinating children, it is genuinely in their best interests.
Miriam, you're a mother and you're a former teacher. What would you want the outcome to be?
Well, in the first instance, I want the outcome to be that we are looking at the best data and that if we are going to press ahead with vaccinating children, it genuinely is in their best interest. But I think my wider concerns are that throughout the course of this pandemic, I don't think we have put our children's interests at the top. I think if we just look at what's happened with school closures and lockdown and restrictions, our children have paid the highest price in this pandemic for the least reward. And it breaks my heart seeing what's happened, not just to my own children, but my constituents' children. And every day, new information emerges, doesn't it, about the harms that they've experienced. And my concern was that in September, the way we decided to roll out vaccination to children was another example of that, because for all other age groups, the government just accepted the JCVI's advice on vaccination. But for children, the JCVI did say that they weren't able to recommend a mass vaccination programme for 12 to 15-year-olds because they were concerned about these extremely rare but unknown risks. But the government pushed ahead anyway. They asked the CMO to look at wider benefits, which is fair enough. But again, that didn't happen for other cohorts for adults. So my wider concern in this pandemic is that instead of putting our children's interests first, because they are vulnerable, we have sometimes subjugated their interests to the interests of adults. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore, and that if we are vaccinating children, it is genuinely in their best interests.
Miriam, thank you for that, and please do stay with us. As you said, it was a letter that was coordinated by yourself. Eminent scientists and medics have signed it. I'm going to be brutally honest, Philip and I have signed it as well, but we do want to hear every point of view there. But let's bring in Professor Brent Taylor, and he's the Professor of Community Child Health, UCL, Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health, and a former JCVI member. So, a letter you're writing to the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunology. Why?
Why? Because I very strongly agree with the sentiments of the letter. I think it's important, first of all, to say, of course, that vaccination is a great good, and it's done enormous benefit to saving lives and to preventing suffering in millions and millions of people. However, the COVID vaccination for children is very difficult to see the justification for, and even more difficult to support.
So what is the new evidence that makes you want to relook at this?
Well, it's partly the fact that the original justification was at best marginal benefit. The Chief Medical Officer and the government decided to overrule the recommendation of the JCVI last September, and on the basis of that it might keep children in school longer, or there might be some slight reduction in serious illness. But both of those are a bit equivocal. It's difficult to see. The main reason children, of course, have been out of school has very little to do with COVID, but more to do with regulations, which one could be a little uncertain about the justification for in most cases. And secondly, the condition has changed. I mean, the Delta variant was obviously a more severe variant, whereas the Omicron is nothing like as severe as it was. Mm-hmm. So the ground rules have changed, as well as that there has been increasing evidence that the side effects are more notable than they were thought to be. Certainly the heart inflammation, the cardiomyopathy, both the lining of the heart and the muscle in the heart is actually more common than it was. And there's been recent evidence last week from one of the big health maintenance organizations in America, the Kaiser Permanente, that the official record is in fact probably deficient by anything up to 30 or 40% of the real incidence when you look at the individual cases on the record.
That's a pretty high number, isn't it?
It is indeed.
And it's not something that we want to gamble.
It's not a very high number, it's still a pretty rare complication. But nevertheless, it's a risk. It's a risk. And you need to, as always with vaccinations, and indeed any medical intervention, you have to balance the benefits against the risks.
Can I ask you, what is the risk of COVID to this age group?
Well, the risk of COVID is probably quite high, but the risk of severe COVID and the risk of dying is infinitesimal. Mm-hmm. It is really very small indeed.
But when we talk about the risk of COVID, we talk about the risk of getting a cold at the moment with Omicron. Is that the type of risk?
It might be slightly more than the cold, but nevertheless, in terms of dying, I mean, a 5-year-old has something like 1,000th the chance of dying from COVID as does an 85-year-old.
Right.
Okay. On that point, though, I mean, the letter refers to the unknown long-term effects of the vaccination on children, but people might ask about the unknown long-term effects of COVID on children. What would you say? What would you say to that?
Well, let's deal with the long-term effects. We just do not know, of course, but nevertheless, quite a number of side effects following vaccinations have only been discovered months or even years after the vaccine was introduced. Mm-hmm. The usual run-in period for a new vaccine for children is about 2 years and up to 10 years. This vaccine has been introduced in a remarkably short period of time, perhaps some might say too rapid length of time, with pretty limited testing, both in adults in the first instance and indeed particularly in children. I think the benefits to children are minuscule. The risks to children, although unknown, are still sufficiently severe, those we do know about, to make it very difficult to support vaccinating this age group.
The authorities say that vaccinating children can help control the spread of the virus to other people who are more vulnerable, such as perhaps elderly family members. Is that not something that's a benefit in itself?
I don't think the evidence is very strong to support that view. And there's another point. I mean, generally speaking, we'd like to adults should protect children. I don't think there's really much of a case for children to have to protect adults.
In the letter, in effect, it says that the chance of myocarditis for children from the vaccine is, if my maths are right, 0.005%.
That's about 5 per million.
Is this such an issue?
Well,
that you may cause, by doing this letter, you may cause people to question the merits of the vaccination, which as you said at the start, has been a great success. Do you think that minuscule risk that you acknowledge is a minuscule risk is worth sort of undermining perhaps the message on vaccination?
Personally, I don't. I think any significant risk, and this is a significant risk, is really not worth taking, both for the generality, which is your point, but also for the specific justification for this vaccine.
And Philip, if you ask me as a mother of sons, do I think that that's a minuscule risk? No, I don't. I don't feel it's a minuscule, and I think that's why a lot of the mothers, and we can tell parents have not taken up this vaccine. It's only 50% of parents have taken it up. You know, we've managed to have a little think about it as mothers of what we think about that. So I do think that it's really good that these questions are being asked, because we want as much information as we can. As you said, things are changing all the time. It's changed a lot with Omicron. The data's changing, the science is changing, and this is such a new vaccine that And it's a great thing that these questions are being aired out and being asked.
Would you accept that you are sort of on the in a minority view amongst scientists, amongst medics, around the world, that actually, you know, if you look at the US Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, they say the COVID vaccine for children is safe and effective, and they even recommend it for children between the ages of 5 to 11. So would you?
And they're thinking of introducing it for children between 1 and 5.
Yeah. So do you?
I don't think that's justified at all.
But do you accept that you're that your view is a minority view, or is your view more widespread than people will admit?
Well, I believe and hope that my view is more widespread than people will admit. But certainly the official view is very much along the lines that COVID vaccine is safe and beneficial for everyone, which is a fairly extreme claim.
Did you agree at the time when the JCVI gave their opinion, which was not to recommend the sort of mass sort of rollout to healthy 12 to 15-year-olds, did you agree with the fact that the Chief Medical Officer was going to look at wider issues, like maybe not being in school or impacts on their education? Did you believe that was correct, that they should have looked at that issue, the wider issue for children to get the vaccine?
Well, they might have considered it, but I mean, that really is outside the remit of an organisation like the JCVI, and it certainly becomes then a political decision.
And as a politician, I would say we would look at everything in the round 360 degrees. So you've got to balance it up. So did you think that wasn't for the Chief Medical Officer to look at? That should have been a political decision? Do you have an issue with the fact that they looked at the wider issue on a sort of a balance of probabilities?
I'm not sure that they did, but and I'm not certain that the Chief Medical Officer made the right decision.
And has this been done before for any other vaccine, looking at wider issues rather than just the medical issues of a vaccine?
Oh, yes, indeed. I think one does.
Yeah,
One always does. You always have to. It's always a balance between the wider benefits as well as the specific benefits. But against that must always be counted both the risks, both the wider risks as well as the specific risks.
Mm-hmm. And I'll bring Miriam Cates back in, the MP who's coordinate this, because like you said, it's not just you signing this letter as an eminent professor and from the medical profession. Lots have signed this. So, Miriam, as I said, this was an exclusive for GB News today. You're sending this letter off. When do you think you'll get a reply? We would like to have the GCVI on the programme as well to hear what they've got to say. When do you think you'll hear back from them, and what are you hoping to do maybe in Parliament next week?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question, Esther. Obviously, I hope as soon as possible. It is a rapidly changing situation, as we know. So I'd hope that they will be looking into it as soon as possible. And of course, I'll let you know when I hear. But throughout the pandemic, I've used every opportunity in Parliament to stand up for the interests of children. Obviously, children don't vote. And so sometimes they don't get a look in. But I think that's why it's so important as politicians, as MPs, that we do stand up for children's interests, whether that's keeping them in school, making sure they're protected, making sure that their interests are being followed. So, yeah, I'll be using any opportunity in Parliament that comes up this week to talk about this and to make sure that we really are acting in the welfare and the best interests of our children.
And Miriam, if the answer comes back, we've looked at it, we will reassess it, but you were wrong, we're still going to continue with this. Is this then, is this where you put your pen down and the cause is over, or will you continue again?
Well, the JCVI are the experts, and that's why I'm writing this letter, because I want them to look at the evidence and to make the recommendations. I mean, as Professor Taylor has said, our vaccination programme in this country has been phenomenal. And all these millions of adults who've voluntarily gone to get vaccinated because they trust it and because they know that it protects against serious illness and death. So the JCVI have got a good record on this. So I want them to make those recommendations. But I think whatever they say, the important thing is that it continues to be the choice of the parent and the child, as it has been so far. And as we've seen, about half of children and parents have taken that up, half haven't. So for me, the most important thing is that it continues to be personal choice and that families' views are respected.
Thank you very much indeed. And Professor Brent Taylor, thank you very much indeed. And we'll follow this story with interest because it was broken here on GB News. Now, coming up, BBC Director General Tim Davie has been trying to justify keeping the licence fee. Is he right? Here's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, mixed fortunes of weather across the UK through this weekend. Some heavy rain and some strong winds on Saturday. A little bit less cold than it has been recently, but sunshine and showers returning by the time we get through to Sunday. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see the reason why. This large area of low pressure is bringing frontal systems eastwards across the UK. So some heavy rain, like I said, and also some strong winds shown by the tightly packed isobars on the chart. So it's a wet start to the day across the UK on this Saturday morning. Some really quite heavy rain around, particularly towards South Wales, South West England. Still the chances of snow across higher ground of Scotland for a time, and some strong winds to accompany that rain as well, particularly towards the southwest and across the English Channel. Now, once that rain clears through, it will turn brighter from the west with some sunny spells, but a rash of showers spreading in from the Atlantic, and again those showers could be heavy and possibly wintry, particularly over higher ground. Still staying windy, particularly towards the southwest with the risk of gales, but for many places a slightly milder day than it has been recently. Now, through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, we say goodbye to that rain across the far southeast, and behind it, a mixture really of clear spells and some showers. Again, those showers could be heavy, possibly wintry, particularly towards the north and the west. But as I said, between those showers, some clearer spells for a time, and under those clear spells, it will turn rather cold. These are temperatures in towns and cities, but I think in more rural spots, a little bit colder than that. So again, the risk of some frost and a few icy patches to start Sunday morning. But as we do start Sunday morning, though, a brighter start to the day, I think, compared to this morning. Some sunshine first thing, but already from the word go, some showers towards the north and the west. Again, those could be quite heavy and possibly wintry, and those will slowly push their way eastwards through the day. A chance of a more persistent spell of rain and snow into the afternoon as well. But as I said, a brighter day for many places, more in the way of sunshine. Temperatures not quite as high as they will be on Saturday, though. I think around where they should be really for the time of the year. Quick look ahead then to the early part of next week. A lot of dry weather to come across the south at first, but a lot of cloud around across the UK. Still some patchy rain towards the north and the west, but I think gradually through the week, many places would turn drier and brighter, with temperatures around average for the time of the year.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello, welcome back to the Saturday selection with me, Esther McVeigh.
Tony Buxton.
And Philip Davis.
And we've got your views coming in thick and fast. So here we go. First here from Ray. Do we know what proportion of NHS staff who are isolating, having tested positive, are unvaccinated? If it's a significant number and it's because of personal choice rather than for medical reasons, then I question their commitment to serve the public.
Well, I don't know about
Tonya?
that one, but anyway, here we go. So this is from Sandra Nielsen, and it's about clean air, allegedly. We are not reducing our carbon footprint by reducing gas production in the UK only to import it from somewhere else. This applies to coal too. This is so hypocritical and destructive to the jobs in the UK. This green energy push makes no sense to all ordinary working folk, particularly in these times of thousands of job losses within the oil and gas industry in the northeast of Scotland. So that's a good point there.
And Jeff in Leicester says proof of previous COVID infection is not proof of immunity. Perhaps if Djokovic could have been given an observed laboratory antibody test on arrival in Australia, the situation may have been clear.
And we'll be talking about that a bit later, won't we, with the sports roundup. And how about this? This is for you too, about Tony Blair's knighthood. This is from Alan. I don't think a petition will achieve anything. It's a gift from the Queen herself. So that's what he has got to say.
I like that, but I do think it's the people who've spoken as well, haven't you? So BBC Director General Tim Davies has marked the start of the corporation's centenary year with a strong defence of the licence fee, arguing the way the BBC is funded is crucial to the country's creative industries.
But can the corporation really justify its current funding, let alone a proposed increase, whilst audiences are falling and young people in particular are shunning traditional mainstream media? Now, we did ask Tim Davie to join us. In fact, we did ask anybody from the BBC if they wanted to speak to us, but they declined the opportunity.
However, we can speak to a man who knows the BBC better than most. In fact, some people would say broadcasting royalty. The former controller of BBC One and former chairman of the corporation, Lord Michael Grade. Welcome to you, Lord Grade.
Good morning, good morning. I'm sorry about the matching jumper and hair.
I think it's very chic. I think you're setting a trend for 2022. Philip, take it.
Thank you. Well, indeed, absolutely. My hair's the same colour. Thank you for joining us, which is more than the BBC themselves would do. Do you agree with Tim Davie about the licence fee?
Well, I think there are two issues. The first issue is the size of the licence fee, which is due to be reviewed, and the government is reviewing it at the moment. I think in the present circumstances, I think the BBC would be very ill-advised to seek an increase with the cost of living where it is and inflation nudging up. So I think that's the first issue. The second issue is the future, the long-term future of the BBC.
And what do you think about that? I mean, Tim Davie said that the licence fee enables the BBC to take risks. I mean, I raised an eyebrow about that. I mean, the BBC strikes me as being one of the most risk-averse companies, certainly in the broadcasting world, and maybe, in fact, the licence fee is the reason why it's risk-averse, because it's petrified of upsetting anybody. But do you think the licence fee enables the BBC to take risks?
It does enable it to, because it has a security of income, which ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 and the commercial digital channels don't have. They don't have the luxury of risk. They can't afford to take massive risks and have huge failure. The BBC can, and the BBC does take risks, not as many as one would like, but they do nurture an awful lot of talent. So I think there is a value in the licence fee. The question is, how extensive should the BBC's operations be, and what's the cost of that? And I think public support, which is what the BBC depends on, public support for the licence fee has to be related to the cost of the licence.
Well, sorry, Tonya, many people would say, look, why should people be forced by criminal law to pay for something that they don't want to watch? And, surely if the licence fee is such good value for money, the BBC would have nothing to fear from going to a subscription service, and presumably people would be queuing up round the corner to buy it if it's such good value for money. Why can't people choose whether they want to subscribe or not?
You could fund the BBC in any way that you want, subscription, advertising, but there would be a side effect of that. If you put the BBC on subscription and made the licence fee, as it were, voluntary, the BBC would be forced into making programmes that it thought would drive subscriptions. So you'd have less and less and less risk in that scenario. I think the argument for the next 10, 15 years is about the quantum of the licence fee and the extent of the BBC's activities. Do they need all those channels? And how do you fund radio? You couldn't do that by subscription.
But Michael, also, do you feel that when it comes to public opinion, the BBC are losing their will to want to fund the BBC? Because, you know, there is a lot of people that say that the BBC has a very strong left bias. So it's not actually representing the news as representing the news. It's giving its opinion and its feelings and the people that are there views rather than just without comment.
There is a lot to be said about BBC journalism. I don't necessarily buy the bias point. I think it is trapped in the Westminster bubble, and it has, you know, historically, it completely missed the Thatcher Revolution. The BBC didn't know what the hell was going on in the country journalistically, and it took a long time for it to catch up with the radical reforms and the Thatcher government's agenda over 3 elections. That was a very big miss. And in a sense, if you look at the last election, BBC missed that as well, what was really going on in the country over Brexit and so on. I thought their Brexit coverage wasn't as... when you use the word impartial or partial at the BBC, people think they've got an agenda. I don't think they've got an agenda. I don't think they think hard enough about the issue. For example, when they interviewed a lot of experts during the Brexit campaign, they never asked any expert which way they were going to vote. So, because we all select the arguments that suit our point of view. So I think it's just shoddy. A lot of what people accuse them of partiality is actually shoddy journalism, very shoddy journalism.
Michael, you say not biased, but maybe if they have got all of a single view, it's just narrow-minded, their own metropolitan elite groupthink. And the reason I say that today, double page in the Mail from Stephen Glover. He says, I admire BBC Radio 4's output, but I have to say they are, he says they are, I'm despair of their bias. So whether it was NHS, critical condition, favouritism for hardline experts, distaste for Boris Johnson, toppling of the Colston statue, lack of balance on hunting, farming views unchallenged. He gives a whole host of biases. Don't you think there is some truth in that? That's what a lot of the public think.
When I first joined the BBC as the controller of BBC One back in 1900 and frozen to death, 84, I think, or 85, I can't remember. No, yeah, about 85. I was one of the few non-Oxbridge senior programme editorial executives in the BBC. That has changed dramatically since I left 3 years later. The Oxbridge bias has been burst wide open. It's a much more diverse workforce. And the idea that there is groupthink in the BBC is nonsense. There are so many different individuals from different backgrounds. It's really... What worries me about BBC journalism is they are slaves to the narrative. And as the bedrock and gold standard of journalism in the UK, they shouldn't be following the narrative. They should be questioning the narrative. And they don't do that often enough.
Michael Grade, thank you so much for joining us this morning to get your views on the BBC. And I'm quite sure GB viewers will have a view as well. Thank you. So coming up, the Bank of England wants to make economics simple. But will they succeed?
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Saturday Selection on GB News. Now, we've heard that the cost of living is going through a crisis. Prices are going up, inflation is rising. But have you ever stopped to think why? What causes inflation and what can be done to get it under control? Well, the Bank of England is releasing a new book called Can't We Just Print More Money?, which aims to demystify the economics of it all. So joining us in the studio is our very special guest of the show, our financial expert, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, the founder and chairman of Regionally. Hello, Justin.
Good morning.
Can't we just print money?
Well, we can do. We've been doing it for centuries, really quite successfully. The problem has been is that traditionally, if you print loads and loads of money, that could be seen as being inflationary. And so, therefore, you could say, well, it's an easy way out of it. And, of course, inflation at the moment, we're now going through a period of rising inflation, but there aren't many of us here who actually remember back in the 70s when we got up to 25%. I mean, that's more Brazilian than its inflation levels. So, yes, but the idea of being able to tell people, actually, why do you need these sort of measurements? How do you, the effect of printing money, how do you actually control an economy with inflation pressures coming through? And I have to say, given the Bank of England's success in this, I'm not too sure they should be writing the book.
I was going to say that. The Bank of England aren't printing money, they're now printing books. But I did think, what is it, the message they're trying to tell? Who are they saying it to? Themselves? The public? What's it about?
I really don't understand, because the whole point really is we should be focusing on financial education of people virtually from the moment they go to nursery school right the way through. We don't teach people finance in this country.
And to be fair, before you came on air, we were talking about that as mums, as dads, or what have you. Why don't children understand it?
It's the one thing that my children scream at. They're adults now, and they don't know how to. I've had to teach them how to pay taxes, what VAT is, all these things, and these are basic things that can get people into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get rid of algebra and let's stick that in instead.
Or both. I don't know. And as a Yorkshireman who's always fond of his money, do you think you'd have needed lessons in finance?
It's instilled in us at birth in Yorkshire to know about money and to look after it. We don't need any education.
You come across those people from Yorkshire who've actually got dust still on their wallet.
You've met Philip before then.
But if we actually just think about the education you need is not, and I fear what they'll be writing about is about economics and things like that. Mm-hmm. You need to take it back to really personal stuff. Mm-hmm. How much money do you need to live on? And basically we're all living to ripe old ages. How do we afford that? And give people the knowledge so they can understand. And the most important bit isn't the financial product or even stocks and shares. It's financial planning. Mm-hmm. Just do the planning across the family. I don't mean family planning, family financial planning. So that generations, because we've got a lot of money locked in now, grandparents, you may not like them, but they're worth something, but link that together and you have the broader British dysfunctional family, I would be surprised actually how much that is worth. We know that, no one knows precisely, but the British consumers are currently sitting on 1.7 trillion of cash because they couldn't spend it. There's only so much stuff you could buy from Argos and Amazon. But they haven't been on holiday, so the big ticket things haven't been used. So we're seeing a lot of cash. Now what do people do? Should they be investing? So how do they go about it? And sadly, there's still far too many scandals of dodgy people still flogging stuff that you shouldn't be having.
But you talk about all the money that people are possibly sat on. I'm sure that isn't obviously fairly distributed across everybody, across the public, but 2022 is going to be known as the year of the squeeze.
It is the year of the squeeze. I mean, you just look at, unfortunately, this is coming up. We know what's going to be happening with household fuel prices. The figure is roughly £1,000 a year for household fuel, the average figure, which is a very difficult figure to come to. And the rough estimate is, after April, that's going to be closer to 2,000. Now, planning for that? No one would have actually thought about that in advance. You just see this volatility. If people could start planning right for the family, right from the word naught, and saving then, that's when you get the real power investing, not listening to silly gits in red braces telling you what to do, but compounding returns over. So just for a second, suppose you get 7% return, which is unlikely. 7% for a balanced portfolio.
No, we've just got inflation at that.
And you got inflation at that. But actually, if your money will in effect double every 10 years. There's a magic number, 72. Divide into 72 the percentage return you think you're going to get. So if you can get 7%, divided into roughly 10. That's the time it takes to double your money. So if you can sit there and say, Granny's left me a few £1,000s and I've got 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you can build that up into a substantial sum without necessarily having to take big risks of trying to punt on a stock.
But most people have no idea how to do that, and that's the problem. And wouldn't it be nice if that particular book was telling you exactly how to do that? Where do you advise people get this advice from?
Well, you've got things like the Personal Finance Society, which is the clues in the title, and they're producing much more information now, which is understandable. And really, the Bank of England, I'd be interested to see what this book is like. If it's focused on economics, then for the nerdy people, I'm sure that's fascinating. But for the person in the street, does this actually help me as to what's going on? To protect my assets and make sure my family is going to be right in several decades' time. We know full well that the governments won't be able to do anything because they haven't got any money. So increasingly it's going to be down to us to look after ourselves. But if no one told you what to do, and also the rules keep changing, it's hardly surprising.
And that's where, if you do believe in the power of the people, a smaller state power of the people, then it is really important we understand money so that we can take control of our lives. And that's what, I know I've always believed in.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But that then goes on to then the next best thing, which is people starting their own businesses. We set up more businesses in this country than France and Germany put together. So sometimes they have no choice because they've been let go. You come across the ubiquitous consultant, which is an unemployed banker. But the idea, therefore, of being able to teach people over time to actually have a better return. So therefore you need to go to the businesses. And you suddenly find people raising money for business. They don't know either. They only learn by their mistakes. And so there are lots of alternatives. Unfortunately, the people you end up seeing is the person who shouts loudest, always trying to get the most commission out of you.
Justin, thank you so much again for being illuminating and joining us here in the studio. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Now, every week on Saturday Selection, we'll be speaking to a big celebrity name, wanting to know more about their lives, but also asking them what they would do differently if they ruled the world.
Joining us this week is former Olympic swimmer Rebecca Adlington, winner of 4 medals, including 2 golds at the Beijing and London Games. Welcome, Rebecca. So if you were queen of the world, what would you do?
I mean, we would all want to do 1,000,001 things, wouldn't we? But obviously, my connection to...
Don't be greedy, Rebecca, it's just one.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, I've got to talk about the fact that children learning a life skill. I don't just see swimming as kind of Olympic sport. For me, it's a fundamental life skill. Accidental drownings have only gone up in the past couple of years. We're surrounded by water all the time. So obviously, it's such an important life skill and gives them so much confidence and have fun as well. So I definitely want to see all children being able to leave primary school, being able to swim 25 metres.
I think that's the skill that we all need. And so what are you doing about that then? If you were going to change the law, what are you doing about teaching children to swim?
I set up my own Learn to Swim programme after London Olympics, the whole Inspire a Generation, the legacy from the London Olympic Games. I set up my own Learn to Swim programme. Across the board, we have 30,000 kids a week learning how to swim, but unfortunately, there's kind of over 1 million children in the UK leaving primary school unable to swim. So we're only such a small dent, but we're definitely getting there. And we're trying to break down those barriers, making sure that everybody in every community has that opportunity, because so many swimming pools are shutting down. And it's really sad to see.
So your law is that, you know, we should all be able to swim. Have you thought further? So if it were a law on the statute book, you know, would you have fines if children didn't learn to swim? Would you make it compulsory? What would you do? Is there anything further you'd push through on the statute book?
Well, it's one of those that is part of our school system. Obviously, it's kind of a statutory requirement that the kids have the opportunity, but unfortunately, there isn't those facilities. If you live 20 miles from the local pool, then it's not going to happen. And so it's impossible to put on Ofsted and kind of get those schools really committed to it when the pools are so far. So obviously, I would probably want to get it where we get backing that every single community has a pool. Even if it's a temporary build pool, you don't have to spend millions on a facility. I've seen schools where they've put a 15-metre tank in their car park, for example, for 8 weeks, and just given that opportunity. So we need that government support definitely to get all children being able to learn to swim.
And I know that some of the pools haven't even opened up yet, have they, because of COVID? And we know that chlorine gets rid of COVID. So it's a good time now to do a shout out to all those that have pools to get them to open up and get, you know, kids learning.
It's such a sad thing because obviously chlorine does kill COVID in about 30 seconds, I think. It's just one of those that unfortunately don't have the resources. We've got a national shortage of swimming teachers across the board. They simply don't have the staff to open back up. It's not a case of that I think a lot of these facilities don't want to open up. It's that they literally can't find the staff to be able to facilitate it.
Rebecca, can I ask you about, I know this is about swimming more generally, but in terms of you being an elite swimmer, I mean, what you achieved was absolutely remarkable and, you know, brought so much happiness to the nation at the Beijing Olympics when you won 2 gold medals.
Cheering you like this.
We were. Everyone was, you know, absolutely fantastic. One of the Olympic highlights. I just wondered how difficult it was for people who were really talented swimmers like you were to get the access to 50-metre pools and things like that so that they could really compete with other people around the world. Was that something that you had difficulty with coming from Mansfield at the getting those facilities?
Yeah, we used to have to travel to get those facilities. Being in the East Midlands, we kind of had to go up to Sheffield or down to Loughborough to get those 50-metre pools. We don't have an abundance of them. We're not Australia, we're not America, where they're kind of pretty much on every doorstep. There is enough of them in the UK, definitely where you can access those. We've got national performance centres where the guys that have just come off the back of Tokyo with all their Olympic success are based. Obviously, we've got development plans over the next couple of years to keep growing that and keep those facilities coming 100%. But it is difficult, and especially if you live in kind of smaller towns. I came from a smaller town. I wasn't a big city girl or kind of anything like that. So, of course, you've got to have that family commitment as well. Like, it was a lot on my mum and dad that they had to be my funder, my supporter, my mentors, my taxi drivers, my everything my parents did. And it's a real big demand on families.
Rebecca, where does your determination and focus come from?
Probably, but some people would have just said I was just too competitive, maybe. But it's one of those that I just always want to succeed. It was just one of those that when my dad was saying to my sisters, "Come on, we've got to go morning training," I was the one stood at the door going, "Just leave him, let's go." And I was always the one driving it over my parents and everything else. So I just always knew if I wasn't going to go, there's other people around the world that were giving that commitment. And I wanted to achieve that success. So kind of had to have that mindset, really. And I felt guilty if I didn't go.
And you've got a tram named after you in Nottingham. I just want to know, like, how that happened. And did they approach you first, or did you just jump on this tram and think, that's weird, it's got my name on the front?
Oh, the amount of things, it's so strange. It's weird going back to my hometown and seeing that the pool that I always called Sherwood Baths is now the Rebecca Adlington Swim Centre, and that's bizarre. And one of the trains in London over to Kent, I think, has got all the Olympians on the side and one after me. And randomly, I was just travelling one day when I saw it as well, so I took a selfie with it. And it's just bizarre, these things that happen, but they're really, really nice because I'm so far from that life now. That it's really nice to kind of jump back in and see those things and just kind of get that warmth feeling again.
Rebecca, thank you so much, but you will always be an Olympian. You've always got that. What a dream. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Coming up in the next hour of the show, we'll find out how well teachers and pupils have coped with the return to school. But first, let's get the weather with Mark Wilson.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, mixed fortunes of weather across the UK through this weekend. Some heavy rain and some strong winds on Saturday. A little bit less cold than it has been recently, but sunshine and showers returning by the time we get through to Sunday. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see the reason why. There's large area of low pressure is bringing frontal systems eastwards across the UK. So some heavy rain, like I said, and also some strong winds shown by the tightly packed isobars on the chart. So it's a wet start to the day across the UK on this Saturday morning. Some really quite heavy rain around, particularly towards South Wales, South West England. Still the chances of snow across higher ground of Scotland for a time, and some strong winds to accompany that rain as well, particularly towards the southwest and across the English Channel. Now, once that rain clears through, it will turn brighter from the west with some sunny spells, but a rash of showers spreading in from the Atlantic, and again those showers could be heavy and possibly wintry, particularly over higher ground. Still staying windy, particularly towards the southwest with the risk of gales, but for many places a slightly milder day than it has been recently. Now, through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, we say goodbye to that rain across the far southeast, and behind it, a mixture really of clear spells and some showers. Again, those showers could be heavy, possibly wintry, particularly towards the north and the west. But as I said, between those showers, some clearer spells for a time, and under those clear spells, it will turn rather cold. These are temperatures in towns and cities, but I think in more rural spots, a little bit colder than that. So again, the risk of some frost and a few icy patches to start Sunday morning. But as we do start Sunday morning, though, a brighter start to the day, I think, compared to this morning. Some sunshine first thing, but already from the word go, some showers towards the north and the west. Again, those could be quite heavy and possibly wintry, and those will slowly push their way eastwards through the day. A chance of a more persistent spell of rain and snow into the afternoon as well. But as I said, a brighter day for many places, more in the way of sunshine. Temperatures not quite as high as they will be on Saturday, though. I think around where they should be really for the time of the year. Quick look ahead then to the early part of next week. A lot of dry weather to come across the south at first, but a lot of cloud around across the UK. Still some patchy rain towards the north and the west, but I think gradually through the week, many places would turn drier and brighter, with temperatures around average for the time of the year.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello, this is the Saturday Selection here on GBNews, on TV and DAB Digital Radio. Coming up in the second hour of today's show, we'll be discussing the crisis in our schools with a new term underway, but the same old problems with COVID. It seems every high street takeaway is offering free meat, or I should say meat-free options this January vegan time. But are they healthy for you, and are they as healthy as they should be? Plus, we'll have all the Saturday sport and showbiz. But first, let's get the news headlines.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Olivia Guthrie. This is your news at 11 o'clock. A group of MPs, leading medics and scientists are calling for a review of the child vaccination programme, specifically for 12 to 15-year-olds. GB News has been given exclusive access to a letter being sent to the Joint Committee on Vaccines and Immunisation. Conservative MP Miriam Cates, who coordinated this campaign, told GB News the benefit to risk ratio of child vaccination should be reassessed in light of the Omicron variant.
Over recent weeks, with the Omicron variant becoming dominant and also with some new studies about the risks, I wonder if that balance has actually shifted. So it's possible now that vaccination doesn't really reduce the risk of transmission. Of course, it still provides excellent protection against severe disease, so it's brilliant for people who are at risk from COVID. But if it doesn't protect against transmission, that reduces the benefits of vaccinating children. And if we know a bit more about the potential harms, then we need to look at those too.
Meanwhile, the JCVI has also been urging the government to ditch fourth jabs for the elderly and focus on rolling out the first booster dose instead. New figures from the UK Health Security Agency show booster jabs are 90% effective in people over 65 after 3 months. Court documents show Novak Djokovic, who's fighting deportation from Australia, tested positive for coronavirus last month. His lawyers claim he was granted a vaccine exemption to enter the country because of the recent infection. The tennis star has been detained at an immigration facility in Melbourne since Thursday morning after his visa was cancelled. Thousands of flat owners will not have to pay to remove dangerous cladding from their buildings. Housing Secretary Michael Gove says developers will have to cover the costs of the cladding changes for buildings over 11 metres tall. The bill's estimated to be up to £4 billion. The head of the UK's armed forces warns the rise in Russia's submarine activity threatens underwater cables crucial to global communications. Admiral Sir Tony Radakin says any attempt to damage the undersea cables, which transmit nearly all internet data traffic, could be considered an act of war. It comes after footage emerged of a collision between a Royal Navy warship and a Russian submarine in late 2020, sparking concerns about Russia's cable mapping activity. The UN's appealing for restraint amid fresh violence in Kazakhstan. Police killed dozens of anti-government protesters after the president there authorised security forces to shoot to kill. Thousands more have been arrested, including the former Prime Minister Karim Mazimov, on suspicion of treason. Russian forces have been deployed to help the regime put down the uprising. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric says people should be allowed to protest.
What is clear is that all demonstrations need to be peaceful. People have a right to express their grievances. It needs to be done peacefully. And security forces need to protect that right and show and act with restraint.
In the US, 3 men have been given life for killing Omar Arbery. The 25-year-old's family were in the courtroom to hear the sentencing. The black man was chased and gunned down in Georgia in 2020. His mother says she never lost faith that justice would be done.
When I entered the courtroom on October 18th, I sat in that courtroom for 5 weeks straight. But I knew that we would come out with a victory.
Yes.
I never doubted it. And I knew that today would come.
And the family of trailblazing actor Sir Sidney Poitier says his death has left a giant hole in our hearts. The first black man to win a Best Actor Oscar has died aged 94. Among his films were In the Heat of the Night and To Sir with Love. It's 5 minutes past 11. You're right up to date. I'll be back with the latest headlines in an hour. Now back to Saturday Morning UK.
Hello and welcome back to the Saturday Selection on TV and across the country on digital radio. So let's go through some of the stories that have been catching our attention in the papers today.
So I love this story because Ricky Gervais, when you think about Ricky Gervais, you think of some acerbic, hard, kind of callous man. But he's in all the papers today talking about Afterlife. Afterlife, which has been watched by 100 million people so far. Series 3 starting next week, or actually on Friday. And he talks about losing his soulmate would be the worst thing to happen to him. And he talks so beautifully about his love for Jane Fallon. And when I read about him and them two together, I thought of you two, actually.
I better have a read of that. Wait, did you really think about that? Or do you think
a
mirror image?
Together. But I love the way he spoke about it, you know, how he's saying that, you know, if we live on this planet for 80 or 90 years, to try and make them the best years of our lives. And, you know, and he knows how hard it is to have loss because he's lost family members and pets and whatever. And it was just a beautiful story.
See that, Phil?
Well,
beautiful story.
Absolutely. On that theme, on page 21 of The Guardian today, tributes paid to Jack Dromey, the Labour MP, after his death yesterday, aged 73. And obviously, our thoughts are with Harriet Harman, who's lost her soulmate. And I know it's very fashionable when somebody dies to say how wonderful they were and what a nice chap they were. But I can say, in all sincerity, that Jack Dromey was a genuinely nice guy. He was a serious politician. He wasn't one for making cheap political points. He always had a smile on his face, and he would always make time for everybody right across the political divide. He actually made a speech in Parliament on Thursday and died suddenly the day after, and I think we're all shocked by that. And again, our thoughts are with Harriet Harman at this awful time for her and her family.
Right, so the other story, which I thought was a kind of, you know, obvious short story, is that women are 12 times more likely to suffer for fashion. I mean, you can
tell us something we don't know.
Would you suffer in heels?
Yeah,
would you feel, or with a tight corset, or be uncomfortable, wear all that kind of, you know, shaping gear? Would you suffer for that?
Probably not, no. Probably in all honesty.
Take a look.
The only suffering I do is trying to fit into my clothes, to be perfectly honest, particularly after Christmas when I put on weight.
I just thought it was such a silly story because completely clear that women always suffer. We suffer in heels, we suffer with garments, we corsets throughout the ages. We've suffered. So, I mean, I don't think you needed to study.
I think the suffering we're doing this morning is his tie as well, looking at it.
Yeah, well, I'm wearing a tie.
Don't you let her, Philip. You look lovely.
But you are health conscious and you're fashion conscious. What have you done? What's your New Year's resolution?
My New Year's resolution is to lose 7 pounds. But that's been my New Year's resolution for about the last 10 years. So I suspect it's going to go the same way as most other people's New Year's resolutions, but at least it'll keep me something for next year.
And this is his kind of friends. They said, well, why don't you make sure that you really do it? Why don't you do a weekly weigh-in on the Saturday Selection, maybe?
Oh, that'll be a way to do it. I'll give you a nutrition plan.
Thank you. I need one.
Yeah, I'll do that for you.
Brilliant.
There you go.
And a totally different story here in the Mail, page 6. And this is Gove's £4 billion plan to save thousands from cladding hell. Lots of us have campaigned for that because it was a disgrace that thousands of leaseholders were trapped by that cladding scandal in properties, unsafe. They couldn't sell them, they couldn't get it insured, and they were being faced with the bill of anything from £40,000 to £100,000. Government now has stepped in. Michael Gove will be announcing this on Monday, what it means. A lot of the campaigning groups have welcomed it. They might say cautiously welcomed it. They don't actually know what is in the detail, but absolutely a step in the right direction. And the Mail here is also taking credit. They campaigned as well. Lots of people did, but the Mail did, and that will be an announcement that we'll all be looking at on Monday.
Another story which I found really, really interesting was, it's in most of the papers, and it's all about the Archwell charity. Meghan's Archewell charity, Meghan and Harry's, and the fact that they've raised £36,681, but a tiny little cat charity has raised £38,000, and a boy in a tent has raised £100,000. So I'm not sure what it is. It's a multi-global industry charity, and it's not really raising any money. So we'd love your thoughts on that. So it's GBNews.uk. Please do email us.
Why is that charity doing so badly? Is that the question you're asking?
Well, it is. It's just what are your thoughts on it? You know, they make such a fuss. They do so much publicity, and it's not actually raising money for anybody.
And one other story which I was interested in, the Daily Express, page 10, is about tax rises and the fact that by 2026, over 1 million more people will be paying the highest rate of tax. Which is not really helping people in the year of the squeeze, as we talked about earlier. We've now got the highest burden of taxation for 70 years, which is something that any self-respecting Conservative should be very
And how does
sorry
that
about.
help, as Justin said, how does that help new businesses start up then?
Well, exactly, and I'd certainly hope that the Conservatives can get back to being the party of low taxes again. But
that'd be nice.
we will see. But if anybody else believes in that, you don't want to read page 10 of the Express today because it will make pretty depressing reading.
Okay.
And this one here, it's in the Telegraph magazine, The Village That Broke Free. As soon as I read that headline, I thought, what have they done? And it's absolutely fantastic. It's Trawden, and what they've decided to do, it wasn't a good time for them. They said it's an unassuming, overlooked village. Roger Bannister's dad grew up there. Charlotte Bronte lived nearby, so it isn't famous in any way. But what? They saw the community centre having to close, the library having to close, the shops weren't being able to stay open, the pub was going to close. So 1,919 of this local village came together and have basically bought and own those premises. It's like a cooperative village, and they're putting life back into the village. They've taken control of it. So I just thought,
what a great
love
story.
it, power people taking over
And I like
their
the
own
title.
village.
I like the title, The Real Village People.
Yes.
I like that. I like that.
Right. So it's been a difficult start to the new term for teachers and pupils across the country. Mask wearing is mandatory in secondary schools, but unions have complained of students refusing to comply, while the government's own evidence of the efficacy of face coverings is far from compelling.
Meanwhile, the new Omicron pingdemic is causing huge staff shortages. So how are schools coping on the front line? How are they dealing with teachers missing?
Let's speak to Adrian Nishaw, headmaster and the chief executive of the Carlton Academy Trust. So, hello, Adrian. The last week,
Morning.
Big week for you in school. How did it go, particularly with all of the testing you had to do of pupils?
Well, sadly, the testing was disappointing. That's just in the secondary schools where we do the testing on return to school. And just around 15% of the students opted in for the tests, which is far less than last year. And it was well communicated before we finished the term and before the start of the new term as well this year. So it's disappointing. So you can ask a question whether the parents and the students are getting fed up with it. And on the back of that, we had 20% positive tests, which are actually more than we expected.
Pupils were sent back home or not allowed to come into school?
Yeah, well, those ones testing positive, yes, they will have to go into self-isolation as a result of that. So that, obviously diminishes the number of students in school. But that was more than we expected and higher than the government was saying was prevalent in the population as a whole. But 20% of the ones who were tested did test positive.
And how many staff did tested positive? How low were you on staff the first week back?
Well, staffing, we're running at 12 to 15% across. We've got 5 schools in the trust, and it runs between 12 and 15%, which is a significant amount. And it puts us right on the threshold of whether we can actually operate a school and certainly operate a school in a quality manner. We're all about outstanding outcomes for our students, and we want to offer, when they're in school, a quality service, not just babysitting service. So absence of that rate there really does cause problems for us. And there's also a financial cost to this one. I'm a Yorkshireman as well, Phil, and money's close to my heart as well. And when you're having that amount of staff absence, you run about £3,000 a day in supply costs if you can get the supply teachers. So there's a significant element there with the cost aspects for schools.
When the government talked about bringing in retired teachers, putting adverts for them, is that really a viable option for you?
Well, it may be for some schools and some trusts, but really not for us. And for me, there's a few major reasons why it doesn't work for us. The first is, will these teachers who've retired really want to come back into school? My experience is when they've retired, they've had enough, they can't do the job justice, and they can't wait to get to the retirement age and retire. So to ask them come back, I don't think they've got any particular goodwill in wanting to come back into schools, and particularly when there's a pandemic, it's a difficult situation in schools, and they're, by dint of their age, are more vulnerable to COVID as well. So that's one major problem. The second major problem, certainly for our trust, is would we want these teachers to come back? I mean, by the very fact that they've retired and they don't feel they can do the job justice, we just don't want a babysitting service, as I mentioned. We want quality people in the schools.
I completely agree with you, Adrian.
Question marks for quality.
I completely agree with you. Having been I used to be a primary school teacher, and I left the job because it was too hard. It's a hard job. It's too hard. And so, asking teachers who've left the industry to come back in again, I don't think you'd be getting the best teachers in, and I think children deserve more than that. But one of the things
I just question that? A too hard a job? It wasn't for you. It's not too hard.
Oh, no, absolutely.
A question mark there. It just wasn't for you.
It's not for me. I admire teachers. I know that I lived, breathed my students, and it was all encompassing for me. It was just really it was a job that I found really challenging. You're right, it's not a too hard job, and you get so much back when you're a teacher. I mean, I literally lived my class's life, and you've got to be able to take that on, and I found it really hard. I admire all teachers because it's such a difficult job, and what I'd really like is to give more respect to teachers, but also I wanted to ask Adrian about, the teachers' unions. I don't know sometimes whether they're putting children first, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask.
I think we've got him back there. That's the broadband across the country. If you can hear us, it was there. We listen, some of the key people in my life have been my teachers, really important. They really have helped me on my journey in life. But want to know now about the trade unions. Are they having a big say in what's going on? Are they dictating what's happening now in schools?
Well, they're not for us, thankfully. I mean, we've got very, very good relationship with the unions. We've got very good relations with the staff. We see staff as a major, probably the primary source of the trust, so we look after them well. I am hearing stories nationally about difficulties being created where different interpretation of the rules are being advised to members in different schools, and clearly that makes things more difficult for them. Can I just go back to the staffing as well? Final point on this one. The problem with the staffing as well is that it's not just teacher absence which is a problem. We've also got the issue with the non-teaching staff absence. With the absence of cleaners, catering staff, site staff. You cannot run a school without those staff as well. And for example, if I was off as CEO for 2 weeks, you probably wouldn't notice. But if your cleaners aren't in for a day, you would notice. So that's the other problem. So we can bring the ex-teachers back, but you still have to close the school because of the other staff.
And can I just ask you about masks in school, because it's been brought in now. We've seen the study, which didn't convince me much that there should be masks in school. How difficult is it to teach children with masks on?
Well, being an effective teacher isn't just knowing knowledge, as you know, Tanya. It's how you communicate with the class. And having a face mask on naturally inhibits the communication between the teacher and the student. So clearly it's suboptimal, and ideally we wouldn't want that in classrooms.
Because you don't have to. It's not law, right? So are certain schools not doing it? Which I know that schools that I know have decided that to pull the masks after the recent studies came out.
No, the guidance now is to wear the mask, but what we are hearing about is isolated examples of schools around the country where the students are actually refusing to wear the mask. I heard of one school in the northwest, and some, I think it was in London, where only 5% of students are wearing them, just absolutely refusing to wear them. So you wonder again, don't you? I mentioned with our students with the testing are losing faith with it. It makes you wonder where around the country the mask wearing students are also losing faith with that, and by dint the parents as well.
Is that not your experience in your school, though, Adrian? Are people wearing
No,
the
not
masks
at
in
all.
your schools?
We have outstanding standards of behaviour, and we also, the students know we want to do the very best for them, so there's a great deal of trust between them. So when we ask them to do something, they do, and they do comply with them. So we're fortunate we don't have those issues, but I'm hearing about those issues in other schools.
And how about it has been a difficult 2 years, and people are looking forward now to what is going to happen with the next year of GCSE exams, A-level exams. What do you think 2022 is going to bring for our pupils?
Sadly, I think the current situation, in the short term at least, will only worsen. The levels of absence, I think Nadeem Zahawi has mentioned, expect them to go to 25%. Now, if that occurs due to the self-isolation rules and transmissibility of Omicron, I can only see schools having to go to remote learning, either year group bubbles going to remote learning or entire schools going, because we can't offer a service, can't keep schools open. Now, that creates problems because in the last 2 years, when remote learning is clearly suboptimal, it's not as effective as face-to-face learning, particularly for the disadvantaged students. So, in reference to that unfairness, there'll be pressure coming on from schools to say, and parents to say, that we go to other provisions this year for exams. So it could be that they go to the predicted results as in the last 2 years, or potentially a halfway house where there are exams, but there's no external performance tables, so that schools aren't unduly affected by the differential in the way that COVID's affected them. However, with that happening, because that could happen, I predict there'll be some sort of change to the rules in the next few weeks as circumstances differ, which I can understand because, I think good leadership is changing, proactively according to the prevailing information.
Adrian Nishaw, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning to tell us what's happened in schools at the start of the year.
Coming up, it's Veganuary. Is it as healthy as it should be, with such a big range of vegan fast food now available? First, though, let's have a look at the weather with Mark Wilson.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, mixed fortunes of weather across the UK through this weekend. Some heavy rain and some strong winds on Saturday. A little bit less cold than it has been recently, but sunshine and showers returning by the time we get through to Sunday. If we look at the pressure pattern, then you can see the reason why. There's large area of low pressure is bringing frontal systems eastwards across the UK. So some heavy rain, like I said, and also some strong winds shown by the tightly packed isobars on the chart. So it's a wet start to the day across the UK on this Saturday morning. Some really quite heavy rain around, particularly towards South Wales, South West England. Still the chances of snow across higher ground of Scotland for a time, and some strong winds to accompany that rain as well, particularly towards the southwest and across the English Channel. Now, once that rain clears through, it will turn brighter from the west with some sunny spells, but a rash of showers spreading in from the Atlantic, and again those showers could be heavy and possibly wintry, particularly over higher ground. Still staying windy, particularly towards the southwest with the risk of gales, but for many places a slightly milder day than it has been recently. Now, through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, we say goodbye to that rain across the far southeast, and behind it, a mixture really of clear spells and some showers. Again, those showers could be heavy, possibly wintry, particularly towards the north and the west. But as I said, between those showers, some clearer spells for a time, and under those clear spells, it will turn rather cold. These are temperatures in towns and cities, but I think in more rural spots, a little bit colder than that. So again, the risk of some frost and a few icy patches to start Sunday morning. But as we do start Sunday morning, though, a brighter start to the day, I think, compared to this morning. Some sunshine first thing, but already from the word go, some showers towards the north and the west. Again, those could be quite heavy and possibly wintry, and those will slowly push their way eastwards through the day. A chance of a more persistent spell of rain and snow into the afternoon as well. But as I said, a brighter day for many places, more in the way of sunshine. Temperatures not quite as high as they will be on Saturday, though. I think around where they should be really for the time of the year. Quick look ahead then to the early part of next week. A lot of dry weather to come across the south at first, but a lot of cloud around across the UK. Still some patchy rain towards the north and the west, but I think gradually through the week, many places would turn drier and brighter, with temperatures around average for the time of the year.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News home and security editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Hello and welcome back to Saturday Selection. I'm Esther McVeigh.
I'm Tonya Buxton.
And I'm Philip Davis.
And we've got your emails coming in thick and fast. So here's one. There is nothing morally right about handing Tony Blair a knighthood. When he was PM, he opened the floodgates to migrant movement so his wife could take advantage of representing them through the court. How he was given the honour of peace envoy to the Middle East is beyond me, after his actions that cost thousands of lives in a war that failed to prove that weapons of mass destruction actually existed. And that was Gary in Derbyshire.
And then I've got Mark, who said, people need to wake up to the policies of many governments around the world, which is just tyranny in its plainest form. We need to reset and reassess, involving the challenge of alternative scientific views. And that's from Mark.
And Chris says, your presenter Philip says Blair should get a knighthood on the basis that he won 3 elections. Rubbish.
Exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark. Well, Chris, if you stay tuned, you'll certainly hear far more rubbish from me.
And Tony Blair does not deserve this honour with his past record. Unfortunately, there is not enough paper to put down all that he did, why I think he shouldn't get that. Our petition, he says, our petition should be discussed in our Parliament. Otherwise, it tells me the great British public does not count. And that's Pauline Turner there. So trust me, Tony Blair has got you all of a doodah this morning, emailing in whether he should get a knighthood or not. You've certainly put the cat...
Upset the apple cart.
Yeah, put the cat amongst the pigeons.
And on a different note, Alan says, regarding the BBC licence fee, if shows by the BBC are so popular, you can always put it on pay-to-view to raise revenue. But they won't do that because I imagine so many people will stop watching it.
Good point. And how can the former Director General possibly defend this unfair tax? As I heard someone put it the other day, would it be considered fair for Tesco to charge me a fee for shopping in Asda? No. So why should I pay a fee to the BBC for watching GB News from Keith? So again, another one that's got you going.
It really has. Well, an estimated 2.5 million people are trying veganuary this year, giving up meat and dairy products for a plant-based diet. With more than 50,000 vegan societies approved products on the market and restaurants launching new dishes all the time, the choice has never been greater. But are the meatless feast food alternatives as healthy as they're made out to be? And should we be wary of overly processed food, whether it's vegan or not? So let's speak to Zoe Harkham, a research doctor in dietary guidelines. Hello, Zoe, and welcome to GB News.
Yeah.
Good morning, Tonya, Esther and Phil. Thank you very much.
I want to know, are you going vegan for January?
No, absolutely not.
That says it all. OK, bye now. No, I'm joking.
The thing is, I can understand why people are trying to cut huge quantities of meat out of their diet because of the type of meat they're eating. What would you think if people have decided to do veganuary? What would you suggest that they do as well as eating non-meat products or non-animal products?
Well, I mean, vegan is not just avoiding meat and dairy. Vegan is avoiding all animal products. So it's meat, it's fish, it's eggs and dairy food. And eggs are very nutritious as well. Some vegans go further. They won't wear any product that's come from an animal. They don't like wool because they think an animal has been upset in the removal of the wool. The fact that it's quite nice if they're about to be in hot weather is disregarded. And they won't eat things like honey, where they think animals might have been harmed in some way for that honey to be extracted. So it's a very extreme diet. And from a nutritional perspective, which is what I look at, it's extremely unhealthy. There are many nutrients that you do not get in a vegan diet. And it's quite interesting. I caught the founders of Veganuary on a breakfast show at the beginning of 2020, launching Veganuary 2020. And the dietitian, who was one of the co-founders, Ursula Philpott, the other co-founder was Jane Land. Veganuary started in 2014 in the UK. Ursula Philpott actually said, if you only do this for a month, even if your diet's a bit poor, it probably won't be too bad. But beyond that, you really do need to plan. And by plan, she meant supplement, because you need to take quite a few supplements because a vegan diet is deficient.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? So, I think if humans were meant to be vegans, or strict vegans, nature would have provided some of these supplements. So, if someone is going to do it, what are the main supplements they need to take? Because we want our audience to be healthy, and some of them would like to do veganuary. So, what are the main supplements that they need to take to make sure that they stay healthy?
Okay, it's a lot, unfortunately, if you start going through the vitamins. So vitamin A, one of the interesting things about vitamins is some of them come in two forms. And when they come in two forms, there's an animal form and there's a plant form. And in every circumstance, the body wants the animal form. So you start with vitamin A, the body wants retinol, which is the form that comes from animals. You get carotene from plants. Now, it's assumed, and I've looked at the Veganuary website in great detail, they talk about vitamin A, but they assume that people can convert from carotene to retinol. That is not universally the case. Some people are quite poor converters, and they end up with quite serious problems as a result of doing that. Move on to vitamin B. You cannot get B12 in a plant-based diet. You absolutely must supplement that, otherwise you're in big trouble. Vitamin D is another one that comes in two forms. D3 is the animal form. You can get some from sunshine, but not today. I've just seen your weather forecast. And D2 comes from plants. You move into the minerals. You don't get heme iron unless you're consuming particularly red meat and seafood. You're likely to be deficient in iodine and calcium. Complete protein is a challenge for vegans because complete protein is only found in animal food. You've got to combine foods as a vegan or vegetarian to try to get your protein. And then finally, essential fatty acids, omega-3, which is one of the essential fatty acids. And essential means we must consume it. This is not optional. There are, again, different forms. EPA and DHA is what the body wants. That's what you get from animal foods, particularly oily fish. You get ALA from things like flax seeds, which is not the form that the body wants. The body then has to convert. So I'm sorry, but we need to consume animal foods. I was vegetarian myself for 20 years. I learned the hard way that it damages your health. We need to eat animals. Sorry, but it's a nutritional fact.
The things I would like to recommend, because I mean there are people that want to eat vegan, and I completely agree with you, but there are ways of eating a really healthy vegan diet. Even if you just do it, you know, like me, I'm 80% vegan, vegetarian, 20% meat, animal products, and there are ways that you can do it, but it's not to go and buy lots of vegan sausage rolls, is it? So, you know, use the whole pulses, use the rice. I just wanted to put out to our viewers that if they're doing that, to just make sure that they're just not filling their diet with processed food, because we want you to stay healthy, don't we?
Phil, fancy being a vegan?
If it's going to help me lose my 7 pounds, I might give it a go.
It probably won't, actually, Phil. Anyway, thank you so much, Zoe, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. No, what I was going to say as well, though, it's not all bad news for vegans, because when I don't do dairy, so I do vegan, though I'm a flexitarian, I eat meat as well, but a lot of athletes now are going on the vegan diet, but maybe it's that extra supplements that they're taking that allows them to do it. But I'm seeing top athletes becoming vegans, whether it's a fashion thing. But anyway, there we go. That was just a thought there. And sport is what we're moving to. So it is a special weekend in the sporting calendar. We've got the FA Cup third round weekend, but the focus of the sporting world continues to be down under. We've got lawyers there for Novak Djokovic have claimed that he caught COVID last month, which is why he has a medical exemption to play at the Austrian Open, despite not being vaccinated. Meanwhile, England have a tough fight to save the fourth test in Sydney, having already lost the Ashes. So we're delighted to be joined in the studio by the Queen of Sports Broadcasting, Rhiannon Jones.
I like that. Queen of Sports?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Absolutely.
I also liked your segue there, Esther, about sporting athletes and then moving swiftly on to
have
the
you
sport.
noticed there's quite a few of them who are saying, I'm going to become a vegan. I think it increases my focus. It's making me feel better, more alive.
Not for me.
Not for you.
No.
I was trying to sell it big there. No.
No, I am a big meat eater.
I suppose it's quite sad that the biggest sporting story of the weekend isn't even about sport, really. It's about Novak Djokovic and...
Indeed.
What's the latest?
Indeed.
What's the latest there?
His lawyers have come out and given some court details, court document details, and they have confirmed what we had all assumed already, was that his exemption was due to a recent COVID infection, and they've specified that he had his first positive lateral flow test on the 16th of December, and that he was COVID-free when he entered Australia, and he'd had these two panels say that he was exempt from having the vaccination, the Victoria State and also the Australian Tennis Association. They both said that he was exempt. Now, the Australian Border Force said that there wasn't enough evidence, that they weren't accepting that. There is an element of sympathy, in my opinion, for Novak Djokovic, in that there happen to be some elections coming up in May, so perhaps he's being used as a political pawn. There's a lot of sympathy going Novak Djokovic's way because of the conditions that he's having to suffer in this immigration detention hotel. And to be fair to him, he did follow the rules. He did have this exemption. He was given a visa.
He wouldn't have got on the plane thinking that he's going to end up in one of these hotels.
No.
He must have been given some information that said you're able to go in. And it seems like common sense is gone. The man's, why are they not letting him play? He's had COVID. He's not going to infect anyone. Let's just get on.
The flip side to it is that you've got to take into consideration how Australians feel. 90% are fully vaccinated, and yet they are still having to follow these incredibly strict restrictions. So most Australians that are fully vaccinated, like I say, 90%, and are having to follow these restrictions, they feel quite strongly about the fact that an elite sportsman might possibly be able to get around these rules. So you can see both arguments.
Yeah.
In other big sporting news, we've got to the last day of the Test match in Australia, and England haven't lost and aren't guaranteed to lose, which is a big surprise.
We're not looking to win, though, just not to lose, not to win.
Largely, I must say, down to a Yorkshire player.
Oh, yes.
Yes, exactly. Johnny Bairstow scoring 100. So
yeah, there is a glimmer of hope, isn't there? Potential draw.
Are England going to lose? What do you you think? They are going to lose.
Yes, I do think.
What about hopefully the Sydney weather might come to their...
I think here's an interesting one. Since I last spoke to you out of the studio, so you mentioned Johnny Bairstow there and Josh Butler. They're both actually potentially injured and out of the Sydney Test. So Sam Billings has come. He's a Kent wicketkeeper. Has made a 500-mile trip by car from the Gold Coast, where he was playing the Big Bash in Queensland, all the way to Sydney, and he may potentially make his Test debut. And that's the news, the development since I last spoke to you through there. So we're yet to see whether.
Well, they need a miracle for them to get a good result. I don't know if this is going to be the miracle.
I'm not sure he's going to be the miracle.
Knight in shining armour.
It's quite a nice story there. And the reason he had to make the trip by car and not by plane was, yet again, due to COVID restrictions. They didn't want to, or he wasn't allowed to board a plane because he had to do his isolation, make sure that he was on his own in the car and to keep it
in a bubble.
Contained. Yeah, so he's made that round trip.
And the third round of the FA Cup, Manchester City eased through last night
against
Swindon.
4-1, they beat Swindon. Pep Guardiola wasn't there because he tested positive for COVID. They were missing 20 players, no less, 7 first-team players, but they still did it. Cole Palmer, 19-year-old Cole Palmer, was one to watch. He had a fantastic game. It's the world's oldest knockout competition. It's steeped in history. You know, there's still potential for upsets. I think the most interesting 2 games of the 32, I mean, it's just an incredible amount of games being played over the weekend, is Newcastle-Cambridge United, because Kieran Trippier has just signed a £12 million deal with Newcastle, their first signing since the Saudi Arabian takeover. So he's one to watch. He's been
first
arguing.
of many, perhaps?
Yes, no doubt he is the first of many, and a good one at that. Whether or not he signed for the challenge or the money, or maybe because he wants to move to Newcastle.
I'm going for the latter.
And then the other one is Aston Villa, Manchester United, because Philippe Coutinho is back on loan, back in the Premier League from Barcelona at Aston Villa, and back with his former captain, Steven Gerrard, who's now his manager. So let's see whether he can rediscover his form now that he's back with Steven Gerrard and back in the Premier League.
And playing Manchester United, who have got their big problems at the moment.
They do have big problems. Now, I don't think that Coutinho will play the FA Cup tie on Monday, but I'm pretty sure he'll probably be in the starting lineup or at least get some minutes next weekend when Aston Villa again play Manchester United, who are struggling even with Ralf Rangnick. Dressing room troubles reportedly, big names, Cristiano Ronaldo, not everyone's getting time. Ralf Rangnick is quite a hard taskmaster and he's not putting up with it. So that's one to watch, but they're not quite coming together this season despite those big names, which has surprised me. I thought Cristiano Ronaldo could deliver with any team.
You can't. Rhiannon, Queen of Sports Broadcasting, thank you very much for
joining us. Thanks, you said you're going to hold my hand through this.
Yes, well, I was looking forward to that as well.
Someone got in our way.
Yes, exactly. I wonder who'd that be. It could be. Anyway, coming up, we get an insight into why the jury in the Colston statue trial came to the decision they did.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Saturday Selection on GB News. We've got lots of your views. This one's quite interesting, and this one comes from RS. He says Tony Blair did win 3 elections, but the majority of the public now realise he was probably the most untrustworthy individual ever to hold that office.
Gail says Dr. Millington Sanders is deluded if she thinks the NHS is wonderful. It hasn't been for a long time. Stop coercion to vaccinate and the staff might stay.
And Jeff here, I think the BBC is biased, and those that cannot see this are willfully deceiving themselves. The Andrew Marr show had a clear left-leaning bias. Question Time was proven to be biased on several occasions. That's Jeff there.
Now, it's been one of the most controversial court cases in recent memory. A jury clearing 4 people of causing criminal damage after toppling a statue of slave trader Edward Colston. The government has promised to tighten the law in response, and there has been criticism of the jury system, which allowed an acquittal despite clear CCTV coverage of 4 defendants playing their part in the protests. But is this public outcry justified, or did the jury have their reasons for coming to the decision that they did? We're joined in the studio by the barrister Francis Hoare.
Now, Francis.
Good morning. Hello.
Good morning. So, is it the end of jury trials?
No. I think the first thing to remember about this is that jury trials are an absolutely essential foundation of our fair society under the rule of law. Juries have always been able to acquit, irrespective of the evidence. There are famous cases in the 17th century. The bishops tried by James II, who were imprisoned and refused to come up with a verdict of guilty. William Penn and others, who's the jury in that case, the Lord Chief Justice said juries have a right to acquit whatever. So I don't think it's right to criticise the jury. Also, we don't know the reason why the jury acquitted. We never know. I was actually on a jury as a foreman only in November. I can't talk about what happened, but I can say that has reinforced my respect and admiration for the jury system. So we can't know why they did it. What we can talk about, and we can know about, is the judge's decision to put certain defences to the jury. And it's also difficult and important to be very careful about how one approaches that. So there were a number of different defences that were allowed to go before the jury by the judge, and the judge said you must and have to consider these things. Some of them might be questionable. For example, one of the defences that was allowed to go to the jury was, by only I think one of the defendants, was that the value of the statue could have been increased by the fact that it had so much publicity. And my understanding is that that is perhaps contrary to a lot of case law, and that's a decision of the judge that can be criticised. But I think rather than criticising the jury, I would rather focus on the merits of what was actually done. Another element, I think, that does go into the legal basis was the judge allowed the jury to consider the proportionality of whether or not the jury were exercising their right to protest. I think it's questionable that the judge should have allowed that to go before the jury. Not only is there clearly law against criminal damage, but my legal view is that it is not and cannot be a right of peaceful protest to destroy property. We have legal bases and legal routes to removing statues. And if they wanted to do that, and if they wanted to allow the people of Bristol or the Bristol City Council to remove it, there were democratic processes for that. They were being gone through, and it's not for these 4 protesters or anyone else to take the law into their own hands. And so while I don't think I think it's very important that we don't criticise the jury. We don't know why the jury came to that verdict. The jury could have come to that verdict irrespective of the law. That's their absolute right. Even if, as Lord Sumption pointed out in the Mail, even if they perhaps are not obeying their oath to give a verdict according to the evidence, even if that were the case, that is still a fundamental plank of the jury system, and a really important one. Because remember, ultimately, the fact that you have 12 randomly selected members of the public who are under no pressure to come up with any particular verdict in any circumstances is a really fundamentally good thing, an important thing about this country's legal system.
I mean, what you've said there's a lot of information there, but for me, it still was a very clear case of criminal damage. And so surely the law is you can't have criminal damage. And so the jury have gone against the law in their verdict.
Well, first of all, the jury had to consider defences that were allowed to be put to them by the judge.
Right.
So you can criticise the judge for allowing those defences to be put to them.
And Robert Buckland hasn't he? The former
Yes.
Attorney General. He's now going to say that he thought it was ambiguous, the direction that we're given. So they're looking at whether we could do it, not for a retrial, but to look at what went on.
But again, I think judges make decisions on the law, and it's very difficult to know the precise basis on which the judge made those directions, apart from anything else, because those directions to the jury haven't been published yet. So I haven't read them, I haven't had a chance to look at them. But I know I certainly read what defences were put before the jury. So I think we have to be careful here. But I think as a general point, I agree that it is not right to say that in any circumstances the destruction of property can be a lawful means of protest. And it may be that other lawyers come to a different view, but I think that's important. And I also think that where it comes to public statues, in a democratic society, we're not talking about Iraq, where they pulled down the statue of Saddam Hussein. We're a democratic society under the rule of law. In those circumstances, of course, the right approach is if you want to remove a statue, you go through the legal process to do so.
But they had tried to do that in the city, hadn't they, for
Yes.
year after year after year. And some people
the
say
other view.
this is sort of part of the problem. That had never resolved it, and then it all came to a head. The Black Lives Matter issue was all of a head, and they took direct action. So people are concerned now with the implications of this ruling. Are you saying direct action is allowed?
Taking the law into your own
Taking the law
hands.
into your
Yes.
own. You think I'm morally right, therefore I will do it. And one other thing, which one of the defendants said, is the police were merely watching. By the fact that they merely watched, they said they felt it gave them permission to do this to the statue.
And that is a criticism that one can quite justifiably make about the police, because I agree. The police should not have been standing by while property was destroyed, because whatever defences might be raised before the jury and however justified they might be, one thing you cannot say is that the police had the right to just stand by and do nothing. Now, they might say, oh, well, there was so much pressure, there might have been disorder. Frankly, looking at the protests, I think that is pretty a risible statement. It didn't look as though this would be a violent outburst and the police would be beaten up if they protected the statue. I mean, these defendants did not look like the type of people who would do that.
There was one other thing. Skews from Little Stoke said that he was inspired to throw the statue into the water after his foot was sore from kicking the bronze. Does that not tell you there's been criminal damage going on?
I think that's the kind of comment in the witness box that I'm not going to comment about. But I think the important point is to focus on the rule of law, that both it's both the jury, respect for the judge's decision, but the ability to criticise judges, because judges are not above criticism. Juries, I think, should not be criticised. We don't know why they came to the verdict. They have the absolute right to come to that verdict. We'll never know, and we shouldn't know, and it's right that we don't. It's right that we don't know who they are.
It's reported in the paper that the defence barrister said to the jury in his summing up, "Your verdict will reverberate around the world. Make sure you're on the right side of history," which seems that even the defence barrister was trying to encourage them to make a political decision rather than a legal one.
He was asked, Mr. Walker was asked to withdraw that by the judge, and he did so.
But the jury still heard it.
They did, but that's... I mean, I think the other point is, and I used to practice in crime, but defending and prosecuting, it is right that the defence counsel always has a lot more latitude than prosecution counsel. Prosecution counsel, as a Minister of Justice, has to present the case fairly. Defence counsel can, and sometimes does, go into hyperbole. And the judges will sometimes tone that down, and that's also fair. But it's absolutely right that the burden of proof is on the prosecution. The standard of proof is beyond reasonable doubt, and that the jury can come up to whatever result they want for whatever reason and can never be interrogated about that. Those are fundamental and important.
Can I just ask you something else very quickly? As you are a barrister specialising in election, public and constitutional law, and you've got to give me a brief answer here. What do you feel that the long-term effects are because of lockdown and on the law? You've got like 30 seconds to answer me.
Incredibly damaging. I think the idea that you can, in any circumstances, restrict who can go into somebody's household, that you can have wholesale bans on political protest, that's the real thing that we should be worried about, not the right to destroy a statue.
Okay.
The right to protest full stop are incredibly damaging and incredibly dangerous precedents.
Thank you. I want to
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Well, you have been watching Saturday Selection this morning with me, Esther McVeigh.
Me, Tonya Buxton.
And me, Philip Davis.
And we hope you've enjoyed it. Do join us the same time next week. But we're going to go to a break, and then after that, it is Alistair Stewart and friends, and he's got some great news here on GB News.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, mixed fortunes of weather across the UK through this weekend. Some heavy rain and some strong winds on Saturday. A little bit less cold than it has been recently, but sunshine and showers returning by the time we get through to Sunday. If we look at the pressure pattern, then you can see the reason why. There's large area of low pressure is bringing frontal systems eastwards across the UK. So some heavy rain, like I said, and also some strong winds shown by the tightly packed isobars on the chart. So it's a wet start to the day across the UK on this Saturday morning. Some really quite heavy rain around, particularly towards South Wales, South West England. Still the chances of snow across higher ground of Scotland for a time, and some strong winds to accompany that rain as well, particularly towards the southwest and across the English Channel. Now, once that rain clears through, it will turn brighter from the west with some sunny spells, but a rash of showers spreading in from the Atlantic, and again those showers could be heavy and possibly wintry, particularly over higher ground. Still staying windy, particularly towards the southwest with the risk of gales, but for many places a slightly milder day than it has been recently. Now, through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, we say goodbye to that rain across the far southeast, and behind it, a mixture really of clear spells and some showers. Again, those showers could be heavy, possibly wintry, particularly towards the north and the west. But as I said, between those showers, some clearer spells for a time, and under those clear spells, it will turn rather cold. These are temperatures in towns and cities, but I think in more rural spots, a little bit colder than that. So again, the risk of some frost and a few icy patches to start Sunday morning. But as we do start Sunday morning, though, a brighter start to the day, I think, compared to this morning. Some sunshine first thing, but already from the word go, some showers towards the north and the west. Again, those could be quite heavy and possibly wintry, and those will slowly push their way eastwards through the day. A chance of a more persistent spell of rain and snow into the afternoon as well. But as I said, a brighter day for many places, more in the way of sunshine. Temperatures not quite as high as they will be on Saturday, though. I think around where they should be really for the time of the year. Quick look ahead then to the early part of next week. A lot of dry weather to come across the south at first, but a lot of cloud around across the UK. Still some patchy rain towards the north and the west, but I think gradually through the week, many places would turn drier and brighter, with temperatures around average for the time of the year.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton.